You're wearing a sweater that was selected for you by the people in this room from a pile of stuff.
Give me a full ballerina skirt and a hint of saloon, and I'm on board.
I have a hole in my stomach!
I can't go back.
Welcome to the She Became Visible podcast. I'm your host, Renee Steelman. This podcast is my story. It's your story. It's our story. It's all the stories of all the women who one day knew that it was time to remember who they were, who they are, and stand up and be seen. Good morning. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am Renee Steelman, the host of She Became Visible. And on my show today, I have two other Renees. And it is a powerhouse. Now, I have to tell you, growing up, I never had to deal with the 4 or 5 Renees in my class. I was the only Renee in the class. And I had a lot of friends whose middle name was Renee, but very few whose first name was Renee. So when I got into the strength training community, I found my 2 other Renees, and I was so thrilled. And the best thing about it is they are also in my demographic, and they are amazing women who are taking charge of their lives. And we're going to talk to them, and I want them to tell their story. And here's the most important thing. They're going to be honest. Okay. None of us are here to sell you a supplement. We're not here to have you sign up for our 12-week program. None of us are trying to sell you anything except for motivation. And what we want to remind you is that your life is not over at 60. In spite of all the commercials for all of the pharmaceuticals that are out there telling you that if you're over the age of 65, basically you need to be on these 85 drugs. We're not doing that. We're going to tell you how to get off of those drugs and how to take back your life. And the thing that is beautiful about talking to women over the age of 60 is we acknowledge age. We acknowledge what happens as your body ages. And we're not saying that we don't have aches and pains. We're not saying that my hip hurts every once in a while. We're not saying that we wake up in the morning and go, why are my legs not moving today? We're going to tell you the secrets to all of that. So let me just give you a little hint here. So I love this idea, secret or salvation. Is there a secret to being over 60 and taking charge of your life and being fit? And we're going to tell you what we think our explanation and secrets are to that. And it might not be for you, but this is what we enjoy doing. Now, here we go. Here's my ladies. Here's my Renee and my Renee. Both of them have pro cards. Both of them have competed in lots of competitions this year. We're going to talk about that. And we're going to talk about how at the age, Renee on the left is 72. Renee on the right is 62. And they are in sparkly, skinny little thong up your butt bikinis. And we're going to talk about that. So let me shut up and bring my ladies on so we can get this podcast going. You're going to love it. So Renee and Renee, how are you this morning?
Great.
Wonderful.
And, it's funny. I never liked my name. And then as I'm listening to you say it over and over again, I started to like it.
Isn't that funny? Okay.
Yeah.
Now, what was it about your name that you didn't like?
I don't know. I don't know. The sound of it I don't know. Do we ever like our names growing up?
Yeah.
You know?
I do. I loved my name.
Did
I
you?
always loved. Yes.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Because it was unique back then. There were no
And
other
it's
Renees.
been unique my whole life as well. Yeah. I'm
Mhm.
61, by the way.
Oh my gosh. I better go change my font.
Almost 62.
How many more months before you'll be 62?
Well, January.
Oh, okay. Almost.
Yeah. I start saying I'm on my way to 62 or the next year, the day after my birthday. So
Isn't that funny? You know how you talk to these old people and we kind of turn into 3-year-olds. Like,
Yeah.
I'm 62 and a half.
Uh-huh.
Quarters, you know. And I'm proud of how
Well,
old.
I just point that out for my friends so they don't think they missed a birthday.
Oh, okay, okay. Well, you know, it's funny because when my husband and I went to France, it was the only place I heard my name pronounced correctly. And it was the only place that when I went to Starbucks, they actually wrote it on the cup
Yeah.
correctly. So
Yeah.
it is. And I'm from the Midwest. So I have a little bit of to a lot of things I say. So, you know, instead of having Renee, it comes out Renee, you know, and so it probably depends on where you come from and how people pronounce your name.
Right. Right.
But like you, and do you all have middle names?
Bobby.
Oh, I love it.
And actually, my first name was Joe, and my middle name was Renee. Okay, and there's a story behind that.
Yeah.
And the story is whenever my parents gave me the name Renee, and I went to be baptized, the Catholic priest had never heard of a Saint Renee. So they had to stick something in the front of it. And my mother's name was Josephine. So that's how so Joe Renee was my legit legal name, but I actually have dropped it on my driver's license and my passport. It's just Renee. So nobody knew that name. So that was my middle name for years, but it's really my first name now. Isn't that wild?
Okay,
Yeah.
you know what? I love that story because it really ties into the She Became Visible part. You didn't even get to have your own freaking name. You had some power, evangelical, religious people. Like, you can't have that name. You have to have this name. You know, so I feel like
exactly. And there was there is a Saint Renatus, but that priest, 72 years ago had never heard of a Saint Renatus, nor had my parents. So they had to just resign themselves to put something in front of it to make them happy. So that's my story.
Oh my gosh. Well, this is beautiful. And I'm so pleased to have you guys on the show. And I have to tell you, people, I met Renee in Arizona, which is where we live 6 months out of the year. And I met the other Renee actually online. I started following her on Instagram. And then we got to meet in person in Texas. So it's, I am the first one to say people that badmouth social media are not using it correctly. And because I have met so many fabulous people. And the fact that Renee Sacco and Renee Launders both know each other as well, but I don't think you've met in person, right?
No. Hopefully one day we will, though.
Yeah. So it's through social media that they met. And I just can't say enough great things. In this day and age, you almost have to be on social media to find your community because we're so isolated for millions of different reasons. But I have just found nothing but beautiful people. So, and I just ignore and block the mean people that are on there.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. And Renee, and I don't know, Renee, you post a lot of, you'll throw in some of your bodybuilding things, but you do a lot with your business on social media.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's start out. We're going to start out with Renee Sacco. And I want you to tell me a little bit about your journey when you started doing strength training or even any kind of exercise program. So tell us a little bit about how you got going on that.
Yeah. So, and thank you so much. I'm really, really so honored to be on your show. I have been an athlete my entire life. I was gymnast, dancer, runner. I was a runner, long distance runner most of my life. I started cycling, road cycling, and everything that I did was all competitive. So I raced when I road cycled. And I started that about 10, 12 years ago. I had a pretty bad accident in a race, and that's pretty much when I stopped running. But I did run most of my life, marathons and half marathons, and I traveled and did races with a group that I was involved with. But after that accident, I broke like 8 ribs, punctured my lung, broke my shoulder. It was pretty bad. So it kind of prohibited me from running for a while. So I actually kind of just went back to cycling. And then during COVID, I I didn't have a gym membership until my late 40s, like almost 50 actually. And during COVID, when everybody was in their house doing whatever, a friend of mine was posting her workout videos with her trainer. And I reached out and said, oh gosh, I feel like I'm being, too sedentary in my house, so he's got something going. And so I met up with him, and he was a bodybuilder. He's now a good friend of mine. And, but he was the first one actually to convince me to do a show. Took about 6 months of working out with him every day. Like, oh, you got to do a show. I'm like, no. I'm not getting up on stage with a string up my ass. But he did this little challenge for all the people that he was training. It was an 11-week challenge to lose weight. And for me, it wasn't about losing weight, but I joined the challenge. And I didn't win the challenge because I didn't lose the most amount of weight. But after the 11 weeks, cutting, and he went about it like a bodybuilder. So he cut water, the last week. And I mean, he took me down to a point where the day of, which would have been the day of our show, I'm like, whoa, I like this. This is pretty cool. Maybe I can do this. And so I think I posted those pictures. It was 3 years ago. And I'm not techie. So when I posted them, I forgot my head. So my kids are like, Mom, But that's what kind of started it. And so I ended up doing a show about 6 months later. And mind you, I'd been a cardio junkie my whole life. So but I've always had a butt. I've always had, people used to, call me bubble butt my whole life. So, but I did have to build that back up, and I had to put on some, more muscle because the amount of cycling that I did, I was riding like 250 miles a week. And, so you break down, I'd go through a weekend and I'd burn 5,000 calories. So I was always breaking down my muscle. So it took him about 6 months to convince me to stop riding if I'm going to train. But I rode through my whole first show, and the first show that I did, I qualified for nationals, and I went and did nationals 10 weeks later. But I will say I have extreme stage fright. So when I got up on the stage, Sandy was our head judge, and she just kept doing this to me. Smile. And I'm like, no, I just want to run off. And Bob Ciccarelli was the host at that show, and I could have killed him. I walk off the stage and he's like, and how old are you again? And so I whispered my age. So he goes to the announcer, and I'm looking for a boyfriend at that point. So he's like, and she's 58. So, but I did.
Rip.
Yeah. But I did get off. I finished that show, and I will say, I'll retreat a minute. I met the most amazing women. I was the oldest person by probably 20 years there. But I mean, the women were like so complimentary of me and just built me up, and made me feel so comfortable. And I did not expect that in this industry. Wow. I really went into it thinking, oh, it's going to be like a cheerleading competition and people aren't going to be friendly. Wow. It was total opposite. And but I did go off thinking I'm never doing this again, but I did it. And, but I thought, oh, just for the heck of it, I'm going to see where nationals is. So I looked it up, and lo and behold, it was in Arizona. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I've got to do it. So I did end up doing that, and I got second. And I still didn't know what I was doing. And by then, Jake, my trainer, had gotten into construction and building. And so he was flipping homes. And so he was totally out of training. So I didn't really have a trainer. So I really didn't know what I was doing. I went there, and I'm like listening to all the girls around me. Oh, they're cutting their salt, so I'm cutting my salt. Then I'm going like, oh, I'm getting really flat. And, you know, I could have had some salt. I had no idea what I was doing. Yeah. But I competed at 50 and got second. So I was, you know, pleasantly surprised and happy. And that's kind of what escalated it. And then from there, I did another show in March or April, Wings of Strength. And I did get first in that. And I won this membership to the gym in Mesa, which is how I ended up there. But when I got it, I'm like, oh my gosh, they kept texting me saying, you got to come check out the gym. And, you know, we live in North Phoenix or North Scottsdale. And I'm like, I'm not driving way out there to go to a gym. Yeah. And about a month later, I did, just for the heck of it. I thought, I have nothing to do. So I went out there, and the day I walked in, I just fell in love with the gym. And I met James and his wife. I fell in love with Michelle's body. I was like a stalker walking around like, I want that. Yeah. And I didn't really know how to use all the machines. And I didn't know that they were married or connected at the time. And James happened to be standing next to a machine I wanted to work. So I asked him how to use it. And then he showed me, and then I followed them over. I saw Michelle and I followed them over to where they were. And I just told her, I said, I love your body. And so James and I ended up talking, and that's how he and I connected and started training together.
That's amazing. And, yeah. You know, and I don't know, Renee Launders, you go, what's the name of the gym that you go, that you train at?
It's a tiny gym in Houston called Village Fitness that's where my trainer is. And so a few days a week, I train with him there. You know, in Houston, it's 5 miles away, but the other days I train at the Y and some other places too.
That's excellent. I don't think people understand how important the gym that you go to is. I know I've got to find the gym, because I know Michelle goes to the gym, but she also goes to another gym. And the equipment that she uses sometimes, I am like, oh, where did you get that abductor machine? I want that, you know, because most of the gyms have that typical little abductor machine. And, but I've seen her on a fabulous machine, and I'm like, I want that.
Have you, I don't know if you've been back since they put in the glute room. Have you been there?
They just finished it. And
okay.
James and I went there a couple times, but then it was like, you know, the guy that owns that little section is like,
yeah, Frank,
you know, so yeah, but they do have some better.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah.
We work out in there, 3 days a week. I'll be there today.
Oh,
yeah, it's really incredible. They've got everything.
Are you going to be working out with James?
No, I work out with him on Fridays. So okay. I did legs with him on Fridays, and then I'll do glutes again today.
Okay. So we're going to move on to Renee and have you tell your story. And I think it's really important to understand that all three of us work with trainers, and you can do things on your own, but there's a lot of things going on in your brain. And what I love about working out with a trainer is I don't have to think. I walk in, James takes over, and I don't know Renee, if your trainer does this. His name is it Darren?
Dustin.
And Dustin. You know, James will kind of sneak around like you'll be doing something, and all of a sudden you're like, did you add weight to this machine? He's like, yeah. And, you know, I didn't even see him do it. You know?
Oh, he said you are strong as an ox.
Yeah. But I mean, I love that about him, that he just kind of says, we need to up this a little bit. And he does it, you know, and I like that. I didn't have to think about it. He thought about it. So Renee, tell us your story of how you got into the fitness industry, and, you know, what it is that has motivated you at 72 you've got another competition. You've done how many this year so far?
I've done, this year. Well, I mean, in my career of 3 years, I've done 11. But in this year, I guess this will be my second one this year, because I just started, my competition a couple of weeks ago. Okay. So my season is starting now. But yeah, it'll be my 12th competition that I'll be doing in about 2 weeks. So,
okay, but are you going to do another one after that? So when you say your season?
Oh, okay. Well, there's one in the UK in London, September
Wow.
22nd, and it's Storm International, and I've competed in their shows. It's not NPC, it's not GBO, which is where I got my pro card, but it's an independent promoter that I know well, and I think it would be awesome to go there and compete, even though they have the oldest category is like, I don't know, 45, something ridiculous, but I saw that as an opportunity because first I'll get to start a vacation in Europe if I do that. But
Yeah.
the other cool thing is, women in Europe don't have so much. Older women are not, really represented, and I felt like this could be kind of my opportunity to go there and say, hey, ladies at any age can compete. I know I'll be competing with people a lot younger, but that's kind of my impetus for doing it, as much as I know some people who are going to compete at that show also. So that's,
Interesting.
so that's September 22nd. I'm not 100% signed up yet, but I'm doing, I'm checking in and I'm looking at my options. So I'm planning on it, and I hope it all works out.
That is, I love that story, and I love that exactly what you're saying. You start out saying, okay, I'm going to do a little local show. It's in Phoenix. So that's what I did. It was like, oh, it's in Phoenix. I don't have any excuses. But then you reach out and you start doing, I see people, they're in Thailand, they're in Europe, they're in Paris, they're, in the Philippines or whatever. And it's fabulous. It's so exciting.
You include it in your lifestyle. And
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think it opens up opportunity for you to travel and do other things.
Yeah. And I think, again, exactly what you said. I'm going to start calling you RS and RL.
Okay.
I found the same thing. My very first competition, definitely wasn't really ready for it. Didn't have all the knowledge and stuff like that. But I love, and I think it was, can't remember if it was RL or RS that you said, it might've even been another podcast. You have to set a goal. You have to set something in the future that you have to look forward to, whether it's a vacation, whether it's a trip, whether, something that gets you motivated to do things. And that's what these shows do. And right away, these two young girls, hey, how are you doing? My name is Joy, and I do this and I do that. And they were so friendly and so encouraging. And neither one of them were, like, I looked at them and comparatively, and I thought, well, you don't have as much, you're not as cut, and they didn't care. They didn't care. They both have coaching businesses, and they're both just there to be their best selves and to encourage other people. And it was amazing. I loved it. So, so Renee, tell us your story. And I know a little bit about your story, but I don't know if all of my viewers do. So go ahead.
Okay, thank you. And thanks for bringing us all together today. I'm totally pumped about it.
Yeah.
Well, I've probably been into fitness in some way most of my life, especially as an adult. I didn't play any big sports in high school. I didn't even finish college. I was a cheerleader in high school, but I always was interested in my fitness, and really my nutrition was always important to me too. But the biggest thing would be that in my early 20s, I was doing the aerobics just like, all the other Renees were. And we thought that was the thing, wearing those one-piece leotards and all that, and working out all the time at the gym, but mostly running, mostly aerobics. And time went on, and there's no way I ever thought about competing in any bodybuilding shows, especially not at this age. But I eventually, over time, I started having some back problems, and I didn't know what the back problems were, but I became a runner, kind of like Renee Sacco. I was running 6 miles every morning religiously. I was addicted to it. I ran till I was 5 months pregnant. I ran in a 10K during that time, and never really was lifting weights, here and there, but not consistently. And anyway, I had my son, Garrett, and he was born in 85. So however many years ago that was. And once he was born, I started running again. I wanted to get up to my, 6 miles every morning thing again. And I got to 2 miles, and my lower back was it was excruciating pain. I could not go any further. And I dealt with it for a while. And I finally went to a doctor, and he said, you've got some serious low back issues, you need to stop running. And, you know, for anybody who runs, that's just like a death sentence. I was just devastated. So I had to figure out how to do a workaround so I could still feel good, you know, keep thin or somewhat thin. That wasn't always successful, but so finally I just dealt with this fitness thing, this challenge for about over 20 years. So from the time I was mid 30s till I was 58. At 58, I had a lower lumbar fusion. I had already exhausted all the other possibilities to be able to alleviate the pain. I tried all sorts of things, but I found, luckily, I mean, I thought my walking life was going to be over because it was hard to walk. I was I was trying to figure out, how am I going to run my business? I have a commercial building permit expediting service, and we'd have to carry these huge plans around the city of Houston to get the permits. And so I was really thinking that, you know, how am I going to run my business in a wheelchair? I was trying to come up with more hobbies that would allow me to be sitting. And so it was really scary. I mean, I was scared to death, but luckily I found this neurosurgeon and in a group here in Houston, and he did this operation called the TLIF. Basically, it fused my L5 and S1 together, and that was when I was 58. And he said, you know, do whatever you want to do, Renee, just get your rehab and then get started with your fitness again. Other than running, he didn't want me running, and he didn't think yoga would be too safe because I'd be pulling my fusion apart. But that's really the only two restrictions. So I got my rehab, and I'm getting close to 60. I'm really kind of at the end of menopause, but I'm still feeling some menopausal symptoms, you know, some hot flashes and stuff like that. So I'm getting almost 60. I'm thinking, okay, well, I've got to take charge. I want to feel good. I want to play with my grandkids. I want to be able to go dance again. I want to do all those things I was doing. I love to travel. And so I went to the doctor, and I got on hormone replacement therapy. That doctor prescribed it. That was 12 years ago. And, you know, he said, this could be a good start for you, but you need to get on a regular fitness program. And coincidentally, he knew a trainer. And he introduced me to Dustin Jackson. And Dustin has his master's in kinesiology. He knows how to train people with injuries. He worked with the Texans. He's got all kinds of certifications. So he happened to be the perfect person to train me. And, you know, I'm all in. I'm thinking, okay, yeah, I want to feel good. I want to be strong. I want to have a strong core as I age. So he introduced me to Dustin, and Dustin really was within 3 miles of where I live. So how perfect was that? Yeah. And so Dustin started training me when I was about 60, and 12 years later, he is still training me today. And I am just so grateful for that, because he's made all the difference to me, you know, in my life with my health and my strength. And he knows about nutrition and everything. So he started training me, and I was just, you know, going a few times a week, going to the gym, the small gym. And he was training me like he would train any other 60-year-old woman, you know, just kind of lifting some weights and, you know, doing some things, some cardio, what you'd normally train a normal 60-year-old woman for. Yeah. So time went by, a year or two went by, and I'm kind of getting bored with the same thing. I'm thinking, we're doing the same exercises all the time. And I thought that was a hassle. But he was doing the right thing. That's what you have to do. But I told him, well, what else can we do? Can I get into something else? And he said, Renee, I can see you on stage. And I said, you know, what are you talking about? And he said, doing bodybuilding competitions. He had trained a few people for that. He wasn't like a big coach. He wasn't pushy or anything like that. And I said, well, I don't even know what that is, but I looked into it. And, you know, I found out, and I said, there is no way I'm going to get on stage in a skimpy, sparkly bikini in my 60s. That is not happening. And show my butt, you know. I was just like, oh my God, are you kidding me? Yeah. So I just said no. And I said no every year for years. I mean, into my mid 60s. I mean, I'm going, I can't do this. I mean, I want to do something, you know, but that is just, I'm exposing myself. And what would people think? You know, that is not what somebody, you know, honestly, my peers, what would they think? Because most of my friends, and I have tons of friends I do wonderful, fun things with. We travel, we dance, you know, we cruise, all kind of stuff. And what would these people think? And I just couldn't get past that. Well, when I got to be about 65 and I went on a vacation with one of my girlfriends, I came back and I'd been lifting weights for, about 5 years. And I saw pictures of myself and I looked like this round, middle age, actually senior citizen. And I'm going, oh, I can do better than that. There's a better Renee in there. I remember thinking that. I mean, for a while I thought, well, this is just what you're going to look like when you're 60 something. You're going to be full and, it is what it is. I'm lifting weights and all that. But I came back and it's just like, oh no, I can't. What am I doing here? And I told Dustin, okay, we got to do something different. And we dialed in my nutrition. Okay, that's the one of the biggest things. I was already eating healthy, but I wasn't really paying much attention. And I was probably 15 pounds heavier than I am right now. So I said, okay, well, I can't handle this, Dustin. We got to do something. And so he helped me. My nutrition, I started watching what I was eating. I set a goal to lose 1 pound. I set it on my Fitbit, 1 pound. And I was like, I don't know, mid 130s or something like that. And I said, okay. And then we did it. And I did the weights and we did everything we needed to do. And I lost 1 pound. Then I set a goal to lose 1 pound again. And I did this repeatedly. I did the extra stuff. And within 4.5 months, I lost 10 pounds just doing this. But the first thing was I noticed that I could do better. I saw that in myself. And so 4.5 months later, I've lost 10 pounds. My muscles are showing more. People at my tiny gym are going, what's Renee doing? And I'm going, it's math and science, really. It's calories in, out, and the other thing is the weights, the training was different. So at that point, mid 60s, I'm thinking, well, maybe I was wrong about, just having to be looking like that at mid 60s. And I thought, well, could I do this competition? I don't know. I can't imagine still putting on the sparkly bikini. Yeah. And then now I'm all in mid 60s.
Yeah.
So
now you won't take off, right?
Yeah. It's like, I remember thinking, oh, I can't even do this. So as time went on, and I'm still saying no, but I was about 68 and then COVID hit. Okay, by then I was committed to my fitness. I was working out all the time. The gym closed and I freaked out. And I told Dustin, oh, I cannot, we're not going to let COVID cause me to gain weight. I'm not doing that. I'm not, you can control how you react to your circumstances. There are the circumstances, but you can control that. And so I said, okay, we got to figure out something. So Dustin came to my back patio, which I have a huge patio in the back. And he trained me and a few other friends from the gym because the gym was closed. And we trained in my back patio for a few months during that time. And my neighbors would see us, running up and down the driveway. And they were wondering what was going on because I live in this quiet neighborhood. So anyway, so then it's like I'm 68 and I'm thinking, maybe I could do this competition stuff. I had all the wrong ideas about things before, about not being able to look like a different person. So I told Dustin, okay, before I turn 70, I'm going to compete. I'm going to do that before I turn 70. And so the time went on. And by then I was like 69. COVID was kind of winding down. And but people were still competing with masks. I remember that. So, okay, I said, okay, so let's find a show. And it was May 25th. And I said, okay, let's find a show where that'll fit with my schedule. I didn't understand how, you plan years ahead for all this kind of stuff. It's like, I was clueless. So there was a show in August and it was in the Houston area in the Woodlands, about an hour drive. And, so I said, okay, well, let's do that show. That'll give me a few months to get ready. I was already kind of getting more buff. I was already kind of training like you would train anyway. I logged my food. I was already eating that way. I've been logging my food for 10 years. So way before I ever thought about competing. And so I hired a posing coach and a nutrition coach, even though Dustin could, it's good to have other people. And so we set out on me training for this upcoming Lee Labrada Classic, which was Lee Labrada was just, and I ended up, okay, I competed in that show. That was like August the 7th. And that was 3 years ago. And just a week or two ago, about 2 weeks ago, I competed in that same show. It was like my 3-year anniversary of my first competition at the Lila Grada Classic. And that first show, that's where I fell in love with the whole bodybuilding community. After that show, I thought, I've got goosebumps right now. It's like I found my people at 69 years old. I
Yeah.
finally found my people. I have lots of wonderful friends. We do wonderful things together, but these people get it, and our brains are the same, and there's no judgment. And just like Renee Sacco said, I was overwhelmed at the support I got. I had no idea. I was just wanted to get through that first show. I had no idea that I was actually going to make a difference in anyone else's lives. I mean, I was clueless. And but I posted some stuff on Instagram, not Facebook at first, because I didn't want to be judged by my peers, you know. And when I started posting on IG, that's when I realized I am really making a difference. I had no idea. So anyway, so that was so much fun, and that's really where I fell in love with it. And it has just been such a great journey. And if I had not taken that step on stage, if I did it scared, you know, you heard that. If I hadn't have done it scared, that first show, I wouldn't be talking with you ladies today. I mean, it's like my life would be not the same.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful for that. Anyway, it's just been a great journey, and I'm just so grateful that I made that decision to do something that was way out of my comfort zone, because it's just made such a difference, and my life is so enriched today because of it. And I'm so happy about that.
Well, and I love that. And Renee Sacco, you're a little bit younger. You're about 10 years younger than Renee and I. And, but we, like you said, Renee, we both grew up in the aerobic era with Jane Fonda doing aerobics. And I started, you know, kind of the same thing, where running was my first introduction, having no experience in any kind of sport or any kind of activity. And so you start doing a 5K, and then pretty soon you're like, well, I'll do a 10K, and hey, I'll run a marathon. And so I thought, this is going to be it. I'm going to start training for this marathon, and I'm going to lose weight, and I'm going to get this body in shape. And I gained weight. I gained weight training for the marathon. And it's so funny, because looking back, like you were saying, looking back on pictures, like when we would go on vacation, and I was feeling so good. I was exercising, I was running, and I thought, I am in such good shape. And then I get these pictures back, and I'm like, hello, old lady. I look 20 years older than I do now in those pictures where I was basically running and doing aerobics.
I 100% agree. I was going to tag off of what Renee Landers was talking about when she was on a journey to lose weight. So I've been 100 pounds my entire life. I mean, I gained 25 pounds with all 3 pregnancies. You know, I ran through them like Renee said that she did. And, you know, I really was not, I thought I ate well. My meals were, you know, pretty healthy. However, I did not track anything because I was doing so much activity, and I ate a lot of sugar. When I started 3 years ago, so I've put on 15 pounds. In my off season, I sit at 115 now. Right now I'm 110, and I'll probably go on stage. My goal is to go on stage at 110 in 3 weeks. So, you know, to stay full. A few weeks ago at Tampa, I was a few pounds less. They said I was too lean. But yeah, so I've put on muscle and weight. So I say that because that was my biggest fear. Like, I think it's so many, I think that that's the biggest fear for women, is that they're going to put on weight and not see it as muscle, or they're going to put on too much muscle and they're not going to look feminine, you know, enough.
Yeah.
But, you know, and it took me a little easy, you know, I'm not somebody who ever even owned a scale until probably about 1.5 years ago. I didn't own a scale, you know, when I first started this either. I just didn't care. I just looked in the mirror, and, you know, how I looked is was good enough.
Yeah.
But now that I'm more professional, in tracking it, and I'm told I have to bring my scale on my trips with me.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and it matters. It counts. I
Yeah.
mean, when, it really does. But
Yeah.
it was definitely something to get used to as that scale went up. And my goal, quite honestly, is to be more dense. And so hopefully by next year, I'm another 4 or 5 pounds, yeah. So
What I think is so interesting is, I think probably Joan is it training with Joan, and then Delphine, Julia. They're probably the only 2 people that I know that literally went from, I've never done a thing in my life. I am 60 pounds overweight and I'm going to start working out. And they, and then they've transformed their bodies through strength training. And so, because like I said, I started running after I had my 5th child. And so, and that was 40 something years ago. So I've been in the idea of staying fit, for 40 something years. But I never saw a change. And Renee, I live in Northern Scottsdale as well. There's a lot of bike riders, aren't there, out there?
yeah,
People
yeah,
riding bikes. And I see people probably at least 30 pounds overweight. And I know that they've chosen to jump on that tiny little bike with wheels, a half an inch thick, because they think I'm going to get fit. I'm going to get in shape. And I feel badly for them because I'm thinking, oh, girlfriend, no. First of all, there's out there in Northern Scottsdale, there aren't a lot of shoulders. So they're literally riding on the road. And I've had a couple of friends that have had horrific bicycle accidents.
yeah,
And just running into gravel and things like that. In fact, I always say, I've heard more accidents, collarbones, all kinds of things broken for you people on bicycles than I have on my motorcycle,
yeah.
And so, but it's not, women especially, I think, are never going to see the change in their body that they want to see if they don't do strength training.
And not only that, when you start on that journey, especially with somebody like Renee Landers, who had that, horrific back situation.
Right.
If you don't learn the right technique from the specialist, the professional, you're not going to see results. You see people in the gym all the time with trainers who are on their phones while their person is working out, or they're texting, and they're not really watching that. Like James, oh my gosh, if my foot is a millimeter, not pointing in the right direction, he's correcting me. And you feel the difference, and then you feel the connection, and that's what helps you grow.
Yeah.
So you really, really, if you're going to start this journey, even if you can't afford to hire a trainer, there are videos that show you technique. But technique is extremely important. It's not all about the training, though, as we know. It's what's in your kitchen.
Yeah. And that's the sad part. Let's talk about that, because I think for women especially. Now, Renee Sacco, are you also on hormone replacement therapy?
I started just testosterone, a very teeny, like 1 IU. I started that 2 years ago.
Okay.
But that's it.
Yeah.
I don't do anything else.
Because I that's been something that's been very interesting to watch. I mean, I went through menopause, 20 years ago. So I'd even forgotten about it, but it wasn't until, and I didn't have a horrible menopausal experience like some people did. And I always say, I never really know if I was going through menopause and having hot flashes, or whether it was just the ephedra that I took to go on a run. Because back in the 80s, you could get ephedra over the counter, and it was fabulous. And I would take a little ephedra pill with my B12 and go for a 5-mile run, and just, I had so much energy. And then, but all of a sudden I'm talking to somebody and my face is starting to glisten, because the sweat's coming out.
Yeah, I never went through it. I know I went through it, but I never had any symptoms.
Yeah. And so I think it was, I don't think my symptoms were too bad. But it wasn't until I started going to a naturopath and they started doing blood work. And I remember the first time I got my blood work back and they're like, oh, you don't have any hormones. I mean, it's like everything was gone, estrogen, and testosterone. I was down to nothing. And, and I mostly went because I have a fabulous husband and my libido was like 0. I mean, it was like, do we have to do this? I don't want to do this. So I was like, something's wrong here, And so that was the main reason why I went. But then when they came back and said, oh, you don't have anything and you need estrogen, your bone health, your skin, your hair, you need these things. And, oh, you want to sleep? Let's put a little bit of progesterone back into your body so that you can sleep. And there was, especially in the 80s, there was a lot of controversy over hormone replacement because they had done those fake tests and they had scared women away from it, associated with breast cancer. Yeah. And now you still have doctors that are like, oh, you're 70. They really look at people. And because my husband's had the same thing. It's like, oh, you're 70. You don't need hormone replacement. You're just an old man. What do old people do? They don't need anything. They're just going to die. That's real. I mean, doctors have that mentality.
It's true.
And
that's
so,
true.
if anything, I would encourage women, if you get a doctor that says, well, you don't have any, your estrogen is really low, your progesterone is really low, but that's normal for a 70-year-old, you walk out of that office and find another doctor. Because what's normal for 70, this is not normal for 70. I think we are the exception to what normal for 70 is. And that includes, oh, you're over 65. I actually had a doctor tell my husband he wanted to put him on, that was I forget what it was, but I said, why? Why do you want to do that? And he said, well, you're 70. That was it. He had no heart issues, no cardiovascular issues at all. But because he was, at the time, I think it was like close to 70, he was going to put him on a medication just because of his age. Didn't even ask him what his lifestyle was like.
Yeah. And they're normally these doctors look like they're overweight. They don't work out. They have no nutritional, background.
Yeah. I started following, I don't know where Renee went. Hopefully she'll be back. But I've started following a naturopath out of Portland. And that's what she says. She goes, if I walk into a doctor's office and they're severely obese, I turn around and walk right back out. Yeah. So I'm not going to take any information from you. Yeah. But when you talk about the difference between your nutrition, because I know women, especially women in my demographics, we grew up with skinny. And I love there she is. She's back. Let me put her back. Okay. There you are. Okay. But we, Renee Launders and I grew up in the same thing where it was really how skinny could you get? And I think they call it heroin chic now. And that's why we ran, right? Because we thought, oh, we're going to get so thin. We're going to look like, whoever the star was in the 70s and 80s. And so it was really just a matter of how many calories I can eat. I can get through on 800 calories a day. And that's kind of how we grew up. That's how we were taught. And Renee, do you remember Susan Powder? Renee Launders, do you remember her? She was you can eat as much as you want to as long as you don't eat any fat.
Yeah. Seems like, did she have real short hair? Or?
Yeah, she had the short pompadour.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I remember my girlfriends, one in particular that had a purse. We would go to the movies. She had a purse full of candy because she thought she could eat as much as she wanted to because they were gummy bears and they didn't have any fat in them. And that's kind of what we've gone through. So when you talk about nutrition, I think women, especially in our demographics, they start going, oh, I'm going to have to go on some diet and it's just going to be terrible. And I'm not going to be able to live, a regular life. But tell people, like, for example, and I know, Renee, on your Instagram, you put a lot of things like what you eat and how we do have to do a little food prep which Ask James is like the bane of my existence. I hate cooking. I don't want to take the time. I'll whip up some chicken in an air fryer and I take it and I I overcook it, fry. I'm like, I don't want to prep food. It's like, can you just give me a bar? Can I just eat a protein bar? And But
I'm just the opposite now.
you
So
love to cook.
so no, it's not that I love to cook, but so the one thing that runs it, or not one thing, but a couple things that run in my bloodline with my mother. I take after my mother, high cholesterol and high blood sugar.
Yeah.
So my cholesterol's always been on the higher side. They've always wanted to put me on medication, and I don't take an aspirin if I don't need to.
Yeah.
Unless I'm desperate. So I monitored everything with nutrition since I got that diagnosis, really just a few years ago. And I'm a sugarholic, and so I binge terribly when I go, when I'm done with the show, like ice cream and cookies and, brownies. And then I'll settle down, because I'll get sick of it or whatever. But honestly, I feel so much. I mean, I can't tell you how good I feel eating clean and having, a little this, a little that, every once in a while, but just not eating it every single day. But my energy level is better than what it was when I was in my 30s and 40s. My system is just so clean, and it works like a really well-oiled machine. And the prep for me, I mean, James really never takes me down to, my calories are never so low. He does feed me, and he feeds me well. And so, everybody's different, not everybody's metabolism runs the same. So for me, a prep has never been that hard, never been difficult.
Yeah.
I don't feel bad. I'm not overly hungry. I eat 5 meals a day. And because I work from home, I don't necessarily have to do a meal prep unless I go out of town, or leave for a whole day. But I'll just, make a fresh meal as I go.
Right.
But in terms of, it being difficult to eat clean, it's not. I mean, you get a list of what your protein and your macros are, and they can vary depending. Your macros can vary depending on what you like. So I think people just have this stigma in their heads that I'm not going to do that because it's going to be too hard.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's
hungry.
Is watching you ladies on Instagram and things like that, and some of the other people, Janine, I love her, and you start, wait a minute, I'm just eating regular food, and you're tracking your macros, and that's not that hard. I use Fitness Pal. What do you guys use to track your macros?
I just have my plan, and I weigh everything out.
Okay.
And actually, I was going to say, the other thing that I love about that, now that I've learned to do that, is I never overeat. So I always feel really good after I have a meal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I can think back on before I started doing this. You'd go to the store and you'd get a big chicken breast and you put it on the barbecue and you'd eat that whole chicken breast. And it's, probably, 10 ounces when your body should only be eating 4, so you're overeating. And I don't know. I wish people knew what we knew.
Well, and I think there's an idea, because if you're in a diet mentality, then there's always Monday.
Right.
I'm going to eat everything I can see over this weekend, because by golly, on Monday, I'm going to start this diet program.
Right.
And you take that away and you start eating 5 meals a day, small meals, 4 ounces of this, a half a cup of this.
And you don't have to do 5.
Yeah.
5, for me, that works.
4 or 5.
You might do 4.
Yeah. And you realize, and I'm going to eat again in another couple of hours, so I'm good. And I'm going out with some friends, and I might accidentally, it wouldn't be intentional, but if some cheesecake fell in my mouth, it might happen, but that's okay, because you've done everything you're supposed to do.
Right.
Track it. I track it. I put it in there, cheesecake, and I find, oh, I went a little over my fat, for the day or whatever. But it's the only thing that I have found. Tell me what you guys do. Is I've done 2 shows now, and both of them, we went to Germany 2 weeks before the one show, and we went to Mexico 2 weeks before the last show that I did. And I'm like, I cannot schedule shows around a vacation.
Yeah, that's tough. I go to Chicago to I've planned, my daughter and my grandkids live in Chicago, and so I did the Chicago Pro a month ago, and going there ahead of time is really tough because my grandkids are all young and the cabinets are filled with junk. And then my daughter hates when I'm prepping my food. She's like, Mom, you cannot come here on prep, because then I'm like in their cabinets, just opening it up going, I want this and I want that. I want this. But yeah, it is definitely tough to go somewhere right before. I would say that if you are going to do this, plan after.
Yeah. And that's the hard thing, so I like the idea. And that's the other thing, because sometimes like NPC, they won't come out with their 2025 schedule.
Exactly. I know.
I have some places I want to go, but this time I want to be smart and plan it for after the show.
Yeah.
And 2 weeks before the show. And and I'm trying to eat my chicken and my rice in Mexico. And then I got food poisoning because I ate chicken out in a little restaurant out in the wild of the Yucatan.
Do you like sushi tuna?
Not raw. Mm-mm.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say that's like my new thing. They have the Scottsdale Meat Market, and I just go get their sushi tuna steaks.
Yeah.
And they're 16 ounces, so I can take a whole steak out of town with me, cut it up in 4s, and that's one whole day, worth of food. And it is so yummy.
Okay, so the texture doesn't bother you?
No, love it. So yummy.
Texture. Now I know you're a pescatarian, Renee. So raw tuna, are you into that?
Well, actually, after being a pescatarian for so many years, I do have to watch the mercury, and large tuna has mercury. So now I love ahi tuna, and I do eat it occasionally, but nothing like I did a long time ago. But it's really yummy. But I've managed to get my arms around that, and that really works best for me. And I do the 5 meals a day. But my experience is different about traveling and on prep. Now I cruise a lot, okay, and to me, when I go on a cruise, I know what I'm going to eat and what I'm not going to eat, and you have so much to pick from. But yeah, I've had to be on prep, not like the week before a show, but within a few weeks before. I have been on more than one vacation. In fact, my first ever show 3 years ago, I went on a vacation to Cabo with all my friends. They didn't even know I was on prep because I wasn't telling them.
Yeah.
And I did fine. But I think it depends on your circumstances. I mean, I want to travel. I want to enjoy my life. I don't want to have to put off things because I want to compete in a bodybuilding show. So I manage. And I mean, I'm also, I'm like right now, I'm 2 weeks away from a show. I'm within a few pounds of my stage weight a lot of times, like one thing after another that you do, you don't have to stress as much. But yeah, I mean, I'm still going on vacations and competing. And I think it's just a matter of the choices you make. I mean, Renee Sacco, you're around a bunch of family and friends. I'm not in an environment either where there's as much temptation. So that's a lot of it. But, you have to kind of be focused. And when I go on those cruises, I just stay away from the dessert area. Doesn't mean I'm not going to eat some because I'm going to be working out too. But I think people need to know, it's part of having your life. It's a lifestyle, and you figure it out, and you don't need to feel like you're sacrificing all the time. Because then, like people say, what diet are you on? I've never been on a diet. I mean, I have a meal plan, and
meal plan. Yeah.
Yeah. And like you gals, I mean, I don't ever feel deprived really, because we're eating, regularly. And yeah, and I mean, I've got my peak week plan here from my last show, and it'll be similar to the next one. And I do my workarounds, but I do meal prep. I don't like to do meal prep. I hate to do meal prep,
Yeah.
but I also feel like that kind of keeps me disciplined. I mean, I'm retired and I can do anything I want to now. So sort of making myself cook once a week is probably an okay thing to do to keep me disciplined and to keep me happy with my food choices too, because then I'm not just randomly picking things. So I think you can do both. You just have to have a balance.
Well, and I like what you just said about being retired because, remember when Oprah lost all her weight and people would say, well, she's rich. She's got a chef. She's got a trainer. She's got this. She's got that, making all of these excuses, and then Oprah, who is still rich, still has a chef, still has a trainer, gained all that weight back.
That's
And
true.
so and I love the fact that tell a little bit, share as much as you're comfortable sharing, but both of you are women that have careers that had worked while you're raising children and still figured out how to work out. And so just share a little bit about that, because I remember back in the days when I had 5 little kids at home, just getting those kids out the door from school, and the little ones that weren't in school, getting them dressed and ready to drop into the daycare center at the gym was my aerobic workout. Now I hadn't even started actually getting on a step class because I was already sweating. I've been moving like 100 miles an hour, getting those kids out the door and ready to go. And so, when people say, oh, well, I can't because, I've got little kids, and I'm like, and what else? So nobody lives in a perfect environment, So talk a little bit about how you've had to adjust your schedule according to life, how life, came and went, and you were like, and I'm going to work out.
Well, for me, I've always been very good at time management, and fitness has always been a priority to me. And if I didn't get my workout in, whether it was my cardio in the morning or whatnot, I couldn't sit at my desk all day without thinking about it and it making me crazy. So it was, it was get up an hour early and get it done. For me, it was challenging. And I see my daughter going through it now, who, has always also been into fitness. Now she has 3 little kids. But so for me, I was single, raising a 1 and 2 year old. I was single and when my kids were 1 and 2, my first 2. So what I would do is and I had the flexibility to work from home when I needed to at that time. I wasn't full-time working from home at that time, but I would literally drop my kids off around 8:30 in the morning, go to work in an office, and come home by 2:30. I didn't take lunch breaks. I would eat my lunch at my desk. And before I picked them up from daycare, this was when I was a runner, I would go for my run. So I'd run for an hour or whatever I needed to get done. And then I would go pick them up from daycare, and I would sit them down in the front yard with me and do my work from there. And then when they'd go down to bed at night, and again, I didn't join a gym for many, many years later, but I would always do push-ups and sit-ups. That was kind of my workout. So I always had to get something done and get that workout in.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I listened to Mark Wahlberg. He's so proud of the fact that he goes to bed at 8:00.
Yeah.
Like blah, 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 whatever. Like, and you did what with the kids? And I know he likes to have breakfast and stuff with his kids. And I'm like, but did you bathe them and get them dressed and pack their backpacks and drive?
Right, exactly. So this is funny. I lived in a cul-de-sac when the kids were really young. And when I'd come home, and I've been in mortgage my whole career. And I've always been very, very busy. And this was at the time when we didn't have computers, laptops. So all applications were taken by hand, and we had bricks for phones, right? So I would sit the kids down, and I was the only working woman in the cul-de-sac. So I would sit them down, or I would sit myself down on the grass in the front, and they would, play with all the kids in the cul-de-sac. I remember it being like 6 months later, and this would go on for hours, from like 3 to 6 o'clock in the afternoon. And I'd be on the phone the whole time with my notepad. And one lady comes up to me. She goes, "You must have a ton of friends." I go, "What are you talking about?" She goes, "You are always on the phone." I go, "Lady, I have no friends." I'm always working. But yeah, I mean, it's priority. It's what is important to you. You can do. I've always been a believer that, I wasn't of the thought of, that when I'm 60, I'm going to look a certain way.
Yeah.
I've always fought it my entire life. I'm going to, why do I have to go backwards?
Yeah.
So.
And Renee, and I know you had your own business, and single mom.
Same thing. Yeah. Single mom. My son was about 2.5 when I got divorced, and I already had this permitting business before he was born. I've had it for, 40 something years. And, but I became a single mom when he was about 2.5. And, so juggling a small business and raising your kid, but it was always a priority. Somehow I would get a workout in. I still remember whenever, Top Gun was first out, and Garrett was, I don't know, a few years old. I still remember having this Schwinn stationary bike and having that on TV, and Garrett's watching it next to me, and I'm pedaling along, watching Top Gun with him, and the music's loud, and it's so much fun. And so somehow incorporating your fitness, and it honestly, you're going to have more energy if you can figure out how to squeeze in some kind of exercise. I mean, I wasn't always going to the gym then. I had weights. I was doing some stuff at home, but you just, if you prioritize yourself, then you're going to have more energy for everybody else and for your business and everything else. Now, I had terrible migraines really whenever my son was little, in my 30s, before and after he was born. I mean, they were debilitating migraines for many years, and it was really hard. And I'm sure it was stress, and you have some predisposition for that. So my grandparents, I think my grandfather had them too, but I remember whenever Garrett was little and I would have a migraine and I'd still have to get my business done. And so I'd get him home from school and I would get him in front of the TV, get him fed, and then I would give myself a shot, this particular shot that back then in the 80s, it was a whole different kind of medication. And I'd give myself a shot, which would really kind of knock me out enough to be able to rest. And he was used to it. And he knew that this was kind of part of the process of how we were going to manage. And by the next morning, I was going to feel okay. And I was going to be ready to take him to school and go back to work. And so it's just prioritizing, it's really a lot of determination. It's about, definitely time management. Like Renee Sacco said, you have to be organized, but it's about your goals. And here's my goals for 2024. And this is a stack of goals from previous years. Okay. I've been writing my goals down since my son was a baby. And I think that's a lot of it too. Write those goals down. I mean, and put them in front of you. And like, I still keep them here and I look at them, and I'm sure y'all do the same thing or some way of that, but it's really about your goals and setting your goals and thinking about it and having an action plan. And once you start writing those goals down, to me, it's kind of a magical thing, writing them down, and that's your brain starts turning. And somehow, I knew I wanted to take care of my son and take care of me, and one thing after another, and everything kind of works out. It's not perfect. It's never perfect, but you make the most of every day, and you don't waste any time feeling sorry for yourself. You don't waste any time. We all have, hey, I've had my bouts of depression. Okay. It's a real thing, but you can spend some time doing that, have your pity party, and then just move on, and think about the positive parts of your life. And That's what my mother taught me really is no matter how bad it is, there's always a silver lining. And that back surgery to me was my silver lining because if I hadn't had that surgery, then I wouldn't have probably started lifting weights seriously. I would have never been competing in any bodybuilding shows and I
Right.
wouldn't be talking to y'all today. So
Well,
sometimes the worst
really
things
do.
turn out to be the best.
I agree with you 100%. And my grandmother, one of her best things was it's all in wanting to. And I think
Mhm.
for women, that's one of the blessings, and I love the trait for women is it's all in what we want, and usually that's the motivation for working around the other things we have to do, take care of our families, support the community. It's all in what do you want? What do you want to do, and what are you going to do to make that happen? And I think all of us, as our children have aged or gone through different things in life, we've had to adjust our schedules around other people's schedules.
Mhm.
I have to adjust my schedule around my husband's because he's going to be gone or something like that. And, raising my kids, my schedule was really based on when were they out of school? What time did they have to be at school? When were they out of school for the summer? And so you base your schedule around other people's schedules. And it's kind of got to the point now that we're completely empty nesters. Up until our youngest son had passed away a couple of years ago, and I would have to go to the gym at 6 a.m. because I had to come home, get him up, get him dressed, and then we had a caretaker that would come in and take him for a few hours. My husband was retired. And so, but once I didn't have that time frame anymore, now my trainer will say, well, can you be here at 8:30? And I'm like, no. I mean, I could be if I had to be, but I don't want to be. I want to be there at 9, That's one of the great things about being completely empty nesters, and grandkids are older, and it's a different time. It's a different season of my life. But it's something that if I have to, I'll work out at 6. If I don't have to, I'll work out at 9, and that's the joy of being retired. But the most important thing is, what do you want? What
Absolutely.
and how and I think my main thing with you ladies is you've really shown people that it's okay to not want the lifestyle that we have. I mean, that's okay too. You choose what you want to do. But unfortunately, when it comes to your health, there are ramifications for actions. And like you said, Renee, I've had doctors for probably 40 years try to put me on a statin because my cholesterol is high. And now new data has come out. Doctors, scientists are going, oh my gosh, never mind. We didn't realize all these statins are causing type 2 diabetes. And you actually need cholesterol. Your brain actually works off cholesterol. And the figures that we were given before do not match up with what your body is producing. And all of this new information is out there about statins. And blood sugar is the big thing. Now they're calling Alzheimer's type 3 diabetes.
Oh, I've heard of that. Yeah.
The sugar intake. And
I do believe that, what I have found though, and thankfully so, is part of how I eat now with reducing the sugar that I do have in my diet. I feel like night and day different, so I can tell if I've overdosed on sugar. I'm tired, lethargic, I just don't, when I'm clean, I feel wonderful. And that's also the motivating factor that keeps me away from the things that aren't necessarily so good for your body. They may taste really really good, but, you really just have to have them in very small moderation.
I find with sugar that I can immediately feel the compulsion. Like if I just have a little bit, then pretty soon it's like, oh, where's the ice cream? And I can tell that it's because I just had something like that.
True. That's true.
So in order to, eating clean is so important. And it doesn't have to be, like you say, it doesn't have to be debilitating to where you never leave your house, you never go out with your friends. I try not to have a heart attack when I pick up some salmon that's been pre-made. We have a fabulous little family-owned grocery store down the street. and they have these little pre-made packets, and there's white rice, some asparagus, and 4 ounces of salmon. I'm like, fabulous. Here's the answer to my prayers. Then I turn it over and I read canola oil, and I'm like, why, God? Why? This has been recommended by dietitians, and I'm like, really? You're recommending canola oil? And so it's like trying to stay away from seed oils, trying to stay away from sugar, trying to stay away from, all of the different substitutes for sugar that are poisoning our bodies. That's hard. And you do have to make an effort. But at some points I just go, I'm going to eat this salmon because I bought it and I am hungry. But
and also, the honest truth is, do you want to live or do you want to die? And how do you want to live? Do you want to live
Yeah. I'm tired of apologizing for sucralose being in something I use occasionally. 99% of the time I'm eating all the right things.
Right.
I'm doing it all right. So if I have something that's bad, that's okay. I'm going to have it anyway because I don't do it all the time. It's not like I'm injecting it into my veins.
It's hard to get away from.
Absolutely.
You go into a restaurant and you think, all right, I'm going to be very good. I'm going to order a steak and I'm going to order some broccoli and some sweet potatoes. And then you say, oh, by the way, what does your cook, what do they cook the steak in? Oh, canola oil. You're like, I can't. I can only do as good as I can do. We live in a world that's run by corporations, and it's bottom line, and canola oil is cheap, and that's what they use. And so you avoid it as much as you possibly can. But every once in a while, you're going to have to say, oh, well, I don't live in Europe. Europe has a stricter rules on the food and what's allowed and what's not allowed than we have in America. And so, like you say, sometimes you're traveling and you want to get a cup of coffee and you're looking, you're like, I have the choice between sweet and low or, brown sugar. And you're like, I probably should do the brown sugar, but I'm going to do the sweet and low, so you're going to
right. You just make a choice.
You make a choice
and you let it go. You don't worry about it.
Yeah. You let it go. So anyway, well, you ladies are amazing. And I love that I know you and you're so inspiring for me. And Renee Launders, if you ever come to Arizona, you have to go to the gym with Renee and I, because it's my favorite gym, because everybody in that gym is bodybuilding. It's not just the typical gym that, the teenagers all go to and all the moms are taking their dancing classes and stuff. It's really intense bodybuilding. So you go there and you're so inspired. It's like, oh my gosh, like you were saying with Michelle, oh my gosh, I'm always going, James, how did she do that? What machine do I do that on?
He keeps reminding me, it's been years.
Okay. And that's another thing. When we're finishing up here, I love, Renee, that you tell people, and the other Renee Sacco, you do the same thing. This took me 10 years. This took me 3 years because, I do these glute exercises and I'm like, and I see people at the gym do this. They'll do some biceps and then they turn, they're in the mirror. And I'm like, oh no. I mean, you're a little swollen right now, but that's going to take another 2 weeks. And you're not going to see the results until after your rest day. And people forget that you have to have a rest day. I've said to James, I said, I don't know what it is, but like I'll work out all week and then I take Saturday and Sunday off and I come back on Monday and I'm like, oh, I think I look a little better because I took a rest day.
Yeah.
Because that's what your muscles need.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's important too. And you need to dance and you need to do other things that you enjoy. So I love that. Well, thank you so much. This has just been so fun. And
thank you.
Renee, your Instagram handle, Renee Launders, her Instagram handle is Fit Over 70.
Well, it's Renee Fit at 70.
Renee,
all one word. RENEEFITAT 70.
Okay,
all
so
one
that's
word.
Your Instagram. Fabulous. She's very, very encouraging. And Renee, what's your Instagram? Do you want people to?
Oh, I have to look.
Yeah.
I'm just Renee Sacco, IFBB Pro.
Okay. All right. Perfect. And you can find, we are in the process of getting our podcast back up. So right now I'm strictly on YouTube. We had to go back and get my podcast hooked up with my website before it would work. And so we're in the process of going back. So that's She Became Visible. But my Instagram is Go Gray Dame. So you can find me there. So thank you so much for joining me. And
Thank you.
have you guys worked out yet, or do you have to go work out?
I'm going in just a bit.
Okay.
And so am I. That's what I'm doing too in just a little while.
Oh, that's fabulous. All right. Well, you guys have a great day.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks so
Thanks,
much.
ladies.
Bye-bye.
Love you guys.
Oh my gosh. Honestly, you've got to follow these women on Instagram because they really are encouraging, and they share what they've done. They're sharing what they're eating, and they're just sharing their lives. It's not impossible. And like I said, there are a lot of other women out there. If you just go to your search on Instagram and search for strength training, there are a lot of other women that did not follow any kind of a health routine throughout their life like the three of us have, but they literally started at 60. And I interviewed Dolphine. I'm going to have her back on the show because I interviewed her back in February, I believe it was. She's a freaking double organ transplant. And she, and she's in the best shape of her life. And last time I interviewed Susan Guidi, and same thing, just decided one day I'm going to take back my life. And I think that's what this show is all about. The purpose of She Became Visible is to encourage women, especially over the age of 60, to be their best selves and to take back their lives. At the age of 60, you have probably spent a great deal of your life being a wife, a mother, a daughter, a sister, a mom. And it's time for you to be a you, and for people to know you by who you are, not by who you're married to, who you're the mother of, or who you're the daughter of. And I'm really encouraging all of you to become your best selves, to become visible for your strengths and your talents and the things that you have to offer to your community. So we have another great show coming up next week. I'm going to be interviewing Anna LeBaron, who escaped polygamy. And if anybody has learned how to become visible, it is Anna. And she has definitely taken back her life. That's what this show is all about. So thanks for joining me. And we'll see you again next week on She Became Visible. Bye-bye.